Wow, I can't believe that worked so well. I'm taking that home to use on my kids. It's going to be incredible. All right, everybody, welcome to Friday afternoon Rotary Club luncheon. Can we use that one? Okay, much better. All right, so I'm Ted Keith. I'll be your Sergeant at Arms today. This is, as you might guess, the first time I've done this. I got all my pointers from Jim Hebner, so if this goes bad, you can blame him. I was going to start with a prayer, but I was told very strongly not to do that anymore, so we're not going to do that. But we are going to pass the fine basket, and so we'll start with that. If anybody was silly enough to get stuck in not one of the 2 traffic jams on the way over, you can put an extra $1 in. That's what I'll be doing. Or if you thought Carolina was actually going to lose the other night to Louisville, you should put $5 in. That was got a little hairy there for a minute. Do we have any visiting guests here? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm introducing Mark Swallow and Alan Zagoria, who are the guests for our National Mission Public. They are with Engineers Without Borders.
My guest is Lily Engelhart, and she's with Edward Jones.
All right. Anybody else? No? Okay. Do we have any member guests that you recognize?
Got Fred here.
Fred?
Still here. From Colorado.
That's right.
We live here now, and I hope to become a member of your chapter in the next week or so.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right.
I'd like to introduce Becky Woodruff as my guest.
I'm new here.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'll start with a little reintroduction. I joined Rotary Club in June, and my reason for joining, again, was due to Jim Hebner. I'll tell that story real quick because, like all good Chapel Hill Connection stories, it starts in a bar. And we were at the Carolina Inn waiting for a speaker series, I guess, that the law school and the media school was hosting together. And I was at this sort of cocktail party reception beforehand where all the free food and drink were, because I'm a journalist, so I know where all the free food and drink are going to be. Even if I'm not invited, I'll just show up and have some. And Jim was supposed to be there, and the clock was ticking and ticking, and he wasn't showing up. So I went to take a phone call from my wife and wound up walking through the bar at the Carolina Inn, and there was Jim Hebner standing at the bar trying to order a white wine and looking very lost, which is weird because Jim knows everybody in this town and everybody knows him. And so I said, "Hey Jim, what are you doing?" And I should back up and let you know that Jim and I worked together about 25 years ago when I was a student at Carolina, just to say that I worked for his layers of deputies, and he was sort of nice enough to help me get a foot in the door of journalism, the journalism community here in Chapel Hill. So I said, Jim, what are you doing? And he said, I'm looking for this, room. You all have been to the Carolina Inn, and there's all kinds of rooms there. But he wasn't quite sure which one it was, so I guess he was hanging out at the bar waiting for the party to come to him, which is normally a great idea, but it wasn't quite working on this day. So I brought him over to the room, and we got to talking, and he said, you would be perfect for Rotary. And I said, oh yeah, why is that? And he said, because you're under 70. And I said, that sounds perfect. So he said, I'm going to introduce you to Linda, and we're going to go from there. And Jim is quite a salesman, as I'm sure you all know. And lo and behold, that was probably in April. And so by June, I was a member of Rotary and got introduced by Dick Bedore. And I said, at that time, I think it was Omar was the president, and the hardest thing I had to do in Rotary until today was bounce a ping pong ball up in the air a bunch of times, and that didn't seem that difficult, but this part was a little bit more challenging. So I am, by the way, a Carolina grad, and I'm from New York originally, but I went to Carolina. We moved back here in 2018. My wife is a member of the communications department at UNC. She's probably known more of the speakers that have come through here than I have, just from her role at the university. She knew Chief James, who was a speaker here just a couple weeks ago. She was hoping to be here today, but there are a bunch of much more boring things she tells me to do, like faculty council. So I don't know if any of you have been in the faculty council room and board of trustees meeting. These are the things that she busies herself with on a Friday. We have 2 kids. Will is 13, and he's a 7th grader at McDougal Middle School. He wanted to be here, but I think he only wanted to be here so that he could use his brand new iPhone to take Snapchats of everything, because that just seems like the only thing him and his friends want to use their phones for. And I have an 8-year-old named Beckett, who is in 3rd grade at Morris Grove Elementary, and in general, they've loved being here, and they'll both grow up being Tar Heel fans, but Will still thinks of himself, I think, as a New Yorker, and Mark Beckett is a Chapel Hillian through and through, because he was about 2 years old when we moved here. So that's sort of how I got to Rotary, and it's been great so far. Everyone here has been super welcoming. I didn't know I had to come here to get big news broken to me by Eric Gilbert, so this has been a good work visit so far today too. But I won't take up any more time, so I didn't even see Mike Clayton here. Was he here somewhere?
I'm filling in for
okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So you know what to do.
That is questionable, but
okay. All right, so it's already 1:10, so I've used up my allotment, so you want to come up and say a show?
Thank you, Ted.
Well done. But that means we will have you back. So good to see everybody. Friday. Hey, President Mike is laid low with bronchitis, so I'm filling in for him today. I don't have much. Are there any messages or announcements anyone has?
Yo.
Yes.
So we had a very successful SEC Family House dinner last night. Number of people participated. In fact, those who participated in serving and preparing meals, why don't you stand up so everybody can take a look and acknowledge you for the great work. So, come on. And one of the wonderful things, so Erica Varno was sitting in for Joe Jenkins, who is our fearless leader when it comes to the SECU Family House. Well, she brought her 2 daughters, and her 2 daughters often make a range of cakes and cookies and cupcakes, and it was just wonderful having them, as well as one of our interactors came and joined us too. So really great. So quick update.
Excellent. Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Now's your time. I have one. You may or may not have seen, but something went out yesterday regarding our Valentine's Day extravaganza. It will be February 9th, back over at the Sheraton Europa. It's a sign up just went out, so if you can make it, please look at that link to include yourself and a guest if you have one. Other than that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Lorenzo to introduce our.
Senator Tim,
Yes.
just want to let everybody know that one of our older Rotarians passed away,
Bill Ellis, yeah.
Will Ellis, and he's been around forever. He came to Carolina, I think it was 1950, is when he went to school, started school.
Yeah.
He was a great guy, died when he was 91.
Bill, thank you for mentioning that.
Probably a good percentage of the members here today had their Rotary introduction lunch conducted by Bill.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I meant to do that. I got an email from the church we share, and if you think it's appropriate, I can forward that to the club, because it's quite something. Thank you. Lorenzo.
Tim, thank you. Hey everyone, good afternoon. So, I think I moved your slide. Gary? There you go. So it's no secret that one of the best creators of high-paying employment in the Triangle are the biotech and pharma industries. But when a company thinks of relocating here and setting up shop in RTP, what gives them the assurance that they'll have a good supply of highly skilled professionals? So today's speaker is at the epicenter of biotech growth in RTP, and he plays a pivotal role in making our state one of the most attractive destinations in the world for such companies. Gary Gillespie is the executive director of the Biomanufacturing Training and Education Center, also known as BTEC, at NC State. So I urge you to read his impressive bio, which is on the tables, but I'd like to share a few cool facts. BTEC is recognized worldwide as a premier center for biomanufacturing training. A few years ago, he crossed the Atlantic several times to close an investment of $27 million from Novo Nordisk to fund a training program between BTEC and one of their leading technical universities in Denmark. Novo Nordisk, as you probably know, is one of the world's largest pharma companies, and they probably could have picked any place in the world to invest their $27 million, and they did it here, with the organization that Gary runs. Gary is the author of what is the industry's leading textbook on the subject matter: Biopharmaceutical Manufacturing Principles, Processes, and Practices. When it came out a few years ago, Gary let me see a copy over the weekend, and let me tell you, I couldn't put it down. And my favorite super cool fact about Gary is that when he got his BS in chemical engineering from NC State, he did so while maintaining a perfect 4.0 average and graduating as that year's valedictorian. So someone once told me that everyone likes a smart, friendly person. I think based on those two metrics, Gary may very well be one of the most likable people we welcome to our club. Please join me in welcoming Gary Gillespie.
So I'll go ahead and use this mic. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. So as Lorenzo mentioned, I am the director of this center at North Carolina State University called the Biomanufacturing Training and Education Center. So I spend most of my day thinking about biomanufacturing. And so what I want to talk about today, I've been here before to Rotary once before to tell you a little bit about BTEC and what BTEC does, but I really want to focus today on North Carolina and what North Carolina has done to recruit this industry into its borders. And so we're talking about the rise of the biopharmaceutical manufacturing and drivers for its growth. So, map of North Carolina. Let me start off by telling you what the conclusion of this slide is. If you were not aware, and several of you out there have told me you're very aware of the biopharmaceutical industry, which is great, but the biopharma industry presence in North Carolina is extremely strong. And it is especially strong in the Triangle area. I promise you, if you're not familiar with the term biopharmaceuticals, I'm going to go over that here in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to give you a sense as to how strong the industry is. And I thought that the best way to do that would just be to show you some of the companies that are in the area. So one of the premier biopharma companies in North Carolina is a company called Biogen. Anybody heard of Biogen? They're local in RTP, and they make many different biopharmaceuticals. There's a company out there called Securus. Securus is located in Wake County and Holly Springs. They are a manufacturer of flu vaccines. So, for example, one of the flu vaccines you might have gotten this year, Fluvax is the name of it, is manufactured at Securus. Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies, a big facility in RTP. I worked there for many years. They're a contract manufacturer of biopharmaceuticals, meaning that they make biopharmaceuticals on behalf of clients like Pfizer and larger or smaller biopharma companies. Grifols is another one. Grifols is in Johnston County. Grifols actually makes biopharmaceuticals by taking blood from human beings and purifying proteins out of the blood. And there are a variety of different products that they make doing that. And this list goes on. KBI has a couple of sites locally in Durham and in Wake County, and they're a contract manufacturer of biopharmaceuticals. Merck, many of you are probably familiar with Merck. Merck has a large site in Durham County making vaccines. Gardasil 9, I think, is one of their main products. A company called Novartis in RTP, gene therapy products. Novo Nordisk, who was mentioned before, Lorenzo mentioned him. Novo Nordisk has huge investments locally. They have 2 sites in Johnston County and a new site in Durham County, making products that you're probably familiar with, a variety of different insulins, as well as a product called Rybelsus, which if you're familiar with Ozempic, which is getting a lot of press today, Rybelsus is very closely related to Ozempic. Okay, Pfizer, huge company, has a large site in Sanford, North Carolina, in Lee County. So I could keep going on here, I won't, but there are many companies like this. These are some of the big ones who are located in this area. And interestingly, you notice that many of those companies were centered in the Triangle region, right? And that is true. So I guess my point here is that the presence of biopharma is very strong now, right? And it's growing. I'm going to show you some information on that. And interestingly, and this is kind of planned, it's tending to grow eastward, and it's even growing southwestward. So there is definite growth in the industry, which is good for North Carolina. So you might be interested to know, how does North Carolina rank among states in terms of biopharmaceutical manufacturing? So this is a slide that my friends at the North Carolina Biotechnology Center gave me, where they were looking at data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if you count up the number of people working in biopharma in particular in North Carolina, it's somewhere around 25,000. It's a bit of an underestimate. It may not tell the full story, because those are likely people that are directly employed in the industry, and it doesn't include all of the various companies out there that are supporting the industry. What you can see is that California number 1, New Jersey number 2, New York number 3, North Carolina number 4. And so North Carolina, and that's typically in these ratings where North Carolina wins. So 4 in terms of biopharmaceutical manufacturing, which is very impressive. What is also impressive, and what I'm actually in awe of when I see these statistics, is that it's not just that the industry is strong currently, and has been for a number of years, it's that there is astronomical growth in the industry. So my point here is that if you tally up all of the investment made in this area, and most of it is in the Triangle, but not all of it, but by biopharmaceutical companies and facilities, that total investment over the last 3 years is over $6 billion. That's very significant. And that investment is actually by companies that are new to the area, which is great. Eli Lilly is one of them. Amgen is another one. They both invested in facilities that are about $500 million worth of investment by each company. Amgen, well, both of these companies are among the premier companies in biopharmaceutical manufacturing. Smaller company, Jaguar Gene Therapy, has invested. A company who invested in Sanford with a $200 million facility is Xena. Fujifilm Diosynth, who has already a large presence in RTP, is investing $2 billion in expansion in Holly Springs. So this is Holly Springs. This is Holly Springs as well. Holly Springs is very good at recruiting companies into its area. Biogen, a company I mentioned previously, is also expanding. So a huge amount, and this is very much a partial list. So there's a lot of investment happening in this area, in our triangle area, in the biopharma manufacturing sector. And what's really interesting is that the bigger picture here is that biopharma manufacturing is actually kind of a subsector of a much larger sector that we would call life sciences. And life sciences includes biopharma manufacturing, but it also includes things like CROs, contract research organizations, that are involved in running clinical trials for companies, various testing organizations. And if you look at that bigger sector of life sciences, 800 plus companies, 75,000 plus workforce. This is all just in North Carolina. 2,500 companies that we would call supporting companies in the life sciences. That's astronomical, right? And that statistic, I'm fairly certain, would put North Carolina in the top 3 of the country in life sciences, for those statistics. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about why North Carolina. And I think it's fair to say that generally speaking, North Carolina, we're known for good universities, right? Especially the Triangle area. We have NC State, UNC, Duke. We have North Carolina Central University in Dartmouth. We have a number of other universities. And this is great for industry because industry, when they come into the state, they need to have an educated workforce. And so the universities are helping to provide that educated workforce. So that's good. There is also, and you in this audience know this better than I do, there's an excellent business climate in this state. And just as an example, we get rated every year as one of the top states to do business in. So most recently, CNBC rated North Carolina #1 for the business climate for states to do business in. And that's great, and that certainly attracts companies. However, given that level of growth that is happening, that $6 billion over 3 years, I don't think that can be attributed alone to these general attributes. There's something else going on here, and that's really what I want to talk to you about, is what has North Carolina done strategically to bring these companies in? And we'll get there in a minute. So I don't want to be too academic with this, but I am going to give you a little bit of an overview of what biopharmaceuticals are, and especially what it takes to make biopharmaceuticals, because that is central to all of this, and this is really the main reason why North Carolina has been able to attract these companies. And then talk about the broader landscape in North Carolina, the companies, the educational institutions, and other organizations that are around that are kind of enabling all of this growth. Okay, one of my favorite slides to show. What is a biopharmaceutical? Most people, when we use the term drug, people know what we mean by drug, legal drugs. We're talking drugs that you use for health benefit, right? So generally speaking, you can categorize drugs as either being small molecule drugs, which I would call traditional pharmaceuticals, or biopharmaceuticals, right? And there's plenty of both going on in North Carolina in terms of manufacturing, but we're really focused on this area. So small molecule drugs. A chemist can take reactant A and reactant B and make a product C. So here's an example, acetylsalicylic acid. It's aspirin. It is the active ingredient in aspirin, right? So here's what we would call our drug product, our aspirin tablets. Everybody's familiar with aspirin, right? Pain reliever, fever reducer, and this is great. And small molecule drugs have been incredibly effective at helping with human health issues. But there is a limit to what a chemist can synthesize. This, even though it might look complex, this is not a very complex molecular structure. If we want to treat other types of diseases, we need much more complex active ingredients. You may not be able to tell from that image, but that's a much, much more complex active ingredient than is this acetylsalicylic acid. A chemist can't make this. The only way that this is going to get made is through biological means. All right? So, here's our biopharmaceuticals. There are pharmaceuticals that are made using biology. That's the bio part. One of the common ways to make biopharmaceuticals is by using cells. In this case, those cells are what we call CHO cells. CHO cells, CHO stands for Chinese hamster ovary cells. Anybody ever heard of Chinese hamster ovary cells? Okay, most of the biggest selling drugs in the world are made using CHO cells. All right. So these CHO cells are genetically engineered to produce a very complex products. Like this is a monoclonal antibody. It is a very large protein, and there are a bunch of different monoclonal antibodies that you can make, and they have great power to treat disease. So as an example, Humira. Humira is a solution, a liquid solution of monoclonal antibody of a particular type. How many of you have heard of Humira? You see it in advertisements all the time, right? The reason I picked it here is because for many, many years prior to COVID, Humira was by far the biggest selling drug in the world, $20 billion a year in sales. And Humira, it is an injectable, like most biopharmaceuticals. The liquid solution of that protein only can be made using biological methods. It is used to treat a variety of autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease, plaque psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, right? So that's an example of a biopharmaceutical. Here are some other examples that you may have heard of. Comirnaty, most of you may not know that name, but you probably have heard of it. This is the Pfizer COVID vaccine. It's a biopharmaceutical. Humira, I just mentioned. Any insulin product today is made as a biopharmaceutical, and there are a boatload of insulins on the market. So insulins are made using genetically engineered E. coli, which is a bacteria, or genetically engineered yeast cells. All right, and that is preferable to the way that insulin used to be made. Anybody know how insulin used to be made? Back before 1980, pre-1980s? Pig and cattle bladders, okay, would get ground up and the insulin was extracted, and that became the medicine insulin to treat diabetes. And this is a much better way to do it, I promise you. It's a much safer way to do it. We mentioned Ozempic, which has gotten a lot of press lately, and Wegovy. Wegovy is the weight loss version of Ozempic, same active ingredient. And Ribelsis is just a different version of these. But these are drugs that are meant to treat type 2 diabetes, okay, various flu vaccines. This list goes on and on. So these are all examples of biopharmaceuticals. The impact of biopharma has been huge. There are more than 400 biopharmaceutical products on the market between the US and Europe. They are used to treat a variety of diseases that I've just mentioned. If you look at a list of the top selling drugs in 2022, 13 of the top 20 are biopharmaceuticals. And the market right now is about $325 billion worldwide. And by 2028, we're going to be very close to $1 trillion market for biopharmaceuticals. Okay, so that's the background on biopharmaceuticals. Here's what's really important, and it's actually important from an economic development standpoint. All right, when we use the term biopharmaceutical manufacturing, I think what enters into a lot of people's heads is this. We're looking at manufacturing operators and facility or maintenance technicians to kind of keep the site or a facility running. And while it is true that those are two very important jobs to make a biopharmaceutical manufacturing facility run, there's much more to it than that, right? We need people doing quality control, testing our products. We need people developing processes. We need people who are developing new products. We need people who are engineering the facilities. Who are developing automation schemes for the facilities, who are working in quality assurance, working in regulatory affairs, and the list just goes on. And so I guess my point here is that if you look at all of these needed roles, right, it's not just operators and technicians that are required. Okay? Many of them, they are required though, and many of those operators and technicians would come to us from the community college with an associate degree. That's great. But there are at least as many people with bachelor's, master's, and PhDs who are required to pull this off. Okay? And so the bottom line here is that we are looking at an industry that requires highly educated, skilled workforce to perform all of these roles. All right? And if you look at surveys of CEOs in the industry, it is very clear that they're among their top 5 priorities is having access to the skilled workforce. All right? And it is especially important, access to a skilled workforce, when companies are making decisions about where to locate or where to expand operations. I actually, in the role that I have, I often sit with prospective companies to tell them about our area, what our center BTech can do in terms of providing skilled professionals, and this is a huge concern for them, all right? I never know in those meetings, I never know who I'm talking to, they come in under code names, but, which is interesting. We can guess by the end of the meeting who they are, but it is absolutely a concern. And many surveys bear this out. Okay, so back to North Carolina. What have we done right? So there's been a very targeted effort to grow this industry. And a lot of this centers around an organization that is referred to as NC Bioimpact. And there are a number of organizations affiliated with NC Bioimpact. And I'm showing you here a partial list, but here's the organization that I am part of, BTech, the Biomanufacturing Training and Education Center. North Carolina Community College System is here. Bright, which is a center at North Carolina Central University, which is in Durham, is here. And then we have two great organizations in the North Carolina Biotechnology Center and NC Life Sci. I'm going to tell you more about each of these organizations because it was North Carolina investing that made these organizations possible. But what you have in these upper three right here is between community college, we've got our operator and technician training covered. With BTech, we have training pretty much in most of those other roles that are required because we're bringing in bachelor's, master's, and PhD students into our programs. And Bright at North Carolina Central is kind of BTech light. All right, they're bringing in students as well, some of the similar kinds of roles that BTech would be educating people for. Okay, so North Carolina has invested extremely heavily in life sciences, and in particular in biomanufacturing or biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So here's a very simple timeline of when things got started. So back in 1984, the North Carolina Biotechnology Center was established, and that was established by the state legislature. So they are funded by the North Carolina state legislature, and their mission is to grow the life sciences industry in North Carolina, and they do that in a variety of ways. They give out loans for small businesses, they give grants for research. They're also very involved in economic development activities, recruiting companies into the area. So that was 1984. And then in 1994, the NC Life Sciences organization was established. That is not an organization that is funded by the state legislature, but actually that is funded by member companies. That's the lobbying body in North Carolina for the life sciences industry. So they lobby both at the state level, but also lobby at the federal level if needed. So that was established in 1994, which, by the way, the whole idea here, especially with the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, was that North Carolina's economy was very much based, manufacturing-wise at least, was based on textiles, furniture, and those industries were going down. And so it was really that impetus that gave the state legislature and some lobbying on the behalf of some smart people that really guided the state legislature to funding the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. Okay, 1999, the Golden Leaf Foundation. Are many familiar with Golden Leaf? Yeah. So the Golden Leaf Foundation, very wise move on the part of North Carolina. The Golden Leaf Foundation took half of North Carolina's tobacco settlement money. So back in the 1990s, there was the class action suit against cigarette companies. Most states got money from that class action suit. North Carolina wisely took half of its money and established the Golden Leaf Foundation. And what the Golden Leaf Foundation does is give grants for economic development, in particular in eastern North Carolina, right? Great thing, I've talked to many states about what they did with their their tobacco money, and many states just put the tobacco money back into their budget and it all got spent and nobody really knows how it got spent. Right? North Carolina, half of that money is going for economic development, specifically in eastern North Carolina. So how does Golden Leaf do that? Golden Leaf doesn't have an interest specifically in biomanufacturing. However, what they did do, at the behest of many companies in the area, is they provided about $70 million in funding through grants to establish NC Bioimpact and then these 3 educational institutions, BTech, BioNetwork, and Bright. So we have each of these institutions, well, BTech and Bright in particular, have beautiful facilities. We have lab space. We have all kinds of ways to provide hands-on training and education. And that was all at Golden Leaf's, or because of, rather, Golden Leaf's funding. Okay, so those are really, you can see the state, and in Golden Leaf, so the state legislature really started it here. And I should add that on top of Golden Leaf's funding, the state legislature provides significant funding for PTEC to run its operations. So PTEC gets about $5.5 million a year from the state of North Carolina to do what we do. Okay? And I do realize I'm running short on time, but just a few words about VTech, so you know what we're about. We are a center. We are very focused on educating and training people on all aspects of biopharmaceutical manufacturing. We do programs both for university students and for industry professionals. We have a lot of students who come through our doors. We're up to about 450 students at NC State annually who take courses from us. It's really been incredible. We have more students who are interested in getting into the industry than we can actually accommodate at this point. We also work closely with companies doing contract services, and we have a lot of research going on at the center as well, but all for the purpose of advancing biopharmaceutical manufacturing. I won't go through all the details in this slide, but this is a statistic, it's really a superlative that is very unique to BTEC. So nearly the students that we track, those are students who get a minor in biomanufacturing or a master's degree from us. We have about 100 students who fit into that bucket every year, but about 100% of them get jobs in the industry within 6 months, and 85% of those students stay local, right? Also, and that really is BTEC meeting its mission. Our mission was to provide a skilled workforce for North Carolina, and this statistic suggests that we're doing it. And so if I kind of go back to the whole point here, is you look at all of this investment that has been made. One of the main reasons that companies are locating here is clearly the support of these organizations, but everything that these organizations are doing to provide that skilled workforce. Okay? So that's a nice statistic. I think I can say that if I look at NC State or any other university in North Carolina, I don't think there are many who have departments or units, or not a department or a unit, but who could say that 85% of their graduates are remaining in the area and contributing very specifically to an industry. My last slide, it is kind of a sales pitch. If any of you have any influence over people who make funding decisions in North Carolina, one of the things that we are trying very hard to do, because we believe it's very necessary, is to create BTEC 2.0. And what we want to do is, the demand is there for our students. We want to increase our capacity for teaching. We want to increase our capacity to work with companies to provide services. We want to enhance research efforts. We need to keep our capabilities current. And we want to develop even more training opportunities throughout the state of North Carolina, not just at NC State. And it will take, we have a plan in place. It will take quite a bit of money to do that. With that, yes, question, go ahead.
So, this is terrific. We hear a lot about a shortage of workers. So, do you have enough PhDs to go around? Do you have to import them from the area, or do you have enough here to fill the need?
It's a very good question. I think that there are still plenty of master's and PhD students who are coming in from outside of North Carolina to work in our industry. I don't think that NC State and BTEC alone are providing everything that the industry needs. And I'm saying that I don't have data that says that specifically, but based on the demand that I see for our students, the demand to get access to our students. For example, we now hold career fairs at BTEC. We have to stop companies from coming into our career fairs because we can't accommodate, we can't house them. The career fairs are getting so large. So I think the demand is there. I think that, to your point, if we increase the capacity for teaching and creating more students who have expertise in biopharmaceutical manufacturing, they will continue to get employed. We will not have any issues with them being employed by the industry. They'll get jobs. Yeah, lots of questions. Go ahead.
with regard to increasing the capacity for teaching, isn't there an opportunity that, you know, the chancellor at NC State might be stepping back and recognizing the incredible engine that you are a part of and the investments, that it would be prudent to make the investments? So where would you rank in terms of priorities at NC State for future investments to make this more sustainable going forward?
You may have to repeat that, Gary.
So the question was basically, does the chancellor know what we're doing and the impact that we're having, and what are the opportunities for additional investment, presumably from within the university? So here's where we're going with that. The chancellor is well aware of BTEC and what BTEC does. And he's well aware of our interest in BTEC 2.0, right? And so we're on the chancellor's radar to start lobbying the state legislature for funds to establish BTEC 2.0. So that will happen. I personally cannot lobby. That's against the rules. But there are people at the university who can lobby. And so we're in major discussions. We're in discussions with them all the time. They're very aware. BTEC, we're very closely aligned with all the economic development folks in the area, and that actually helps us at levels like vice chancellor and chancellor levels, because they're definitely speaking on our behalf. But the university recognizes it. One of the challenges we face, though, at being at NC State is a Tier 1 research university. We're very focused on research, because you have this center that is very focused on training and education with a little bit of research going on. And sometimes it's we're not always a great fit, a perfect fit with the university. So we have to stay on top of our university administrators to let them know the impact that we're having. Lorenzo.
Yeah, so how big is this? I mean, how many millions of dollars, how many years, what changed to your physical plan?
BTEC 2.0.
Yeah.
So right now we're looking to expand to, so right now we have an 80,000 square foot facility. That's the current BTEC. We want another facility that is at 100,000 square feet. We are currently working with an engineering and design firm to begin designing that facility. I'm sure that facility, we're going to need well over $100 million to construct that facility. We are currently, we are working with many of our external stakeholders, like the North Carolina Biotechnology Center and NC Life Sci, to advocate for us. They would be very supportive of this. The question is just, how do you go about getting the money, right? And but that's what we're looking at. So 100,000 square foot facility. We already have some funding through the university. The research part of what we are proposing in all of this, the university has already created what's called the faculty cluster that the university will support that to bring faculty in specifically to do research in the area of biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So we have had that and that would be the university's contribution to all of this. The rest of the funding, though, to build this facility that we need to do all of this would have to come from the state legislature, companies, some combination.
I have a question about the Golden Leaf Foundation.
Sure, go ahead.
So it's been in existence for 23 or 24 years. Has it had a positive impact on economic development in Eastern North Carolina?
Well, that's a good question. I would say I'm not a Golden Leaf, I'm not an expert on the Golden Leaf Foundation. They are very focused on economic development in Eastern North Carolina. So for example, today, if BTEC was pitched today to the Golden Leaf, I don't know that they would fund it because we're not far enough into Eastern North Carolina. The one thing I can say is that at East Carolina University, which is certainly Eastern North Carolina, Golden Leaf has funded at least one, maybe a couple of different initiatives in the area, the field that I'm most aware of pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So they are certainly funding initiatives. What impact those initiatives have had, I don't actually know. Can't speak to that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. A couple of quick questions. One is, are you a state employee? Is that why you can't lobby, or not?
I am a state employee,
so that's okay.
And in my position, yes, there's no lobbying. So NC State, I'm sure it's the same at UNC, has people who are designated as that can go speak with and lobby the state legislature.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question is, of the 700 people that you say you had that are in the graduate program level, are most of those actually getting graduate degrees at State or UNC, or do they kind of come to you outside of their training program and spend 6 months a year? How does that work? And
So,
lastly, I know that the federal government gave the state $1.6 billion as part of the Medicaid expansion deal that was reached. Did you guys get a piece of that?
No, we don't get a piece of that. However, okay, so on the question of graduate students, so BTEC as a center, we have a master's program, right? And so those students, most of them are full-time or part-time students who are getting a master's degree in biomanufacturing, right? We do have PhD students who come in and take courses at BTEC. They're not getting a PhD in biomanufacturing. They're getting a PhD in chemical engineering or biochemistry, who will come in and take courses from us. So we're not a department in that sense, right? We do have plenty of students at the graduate level who are either graduating with a degree in biomanufacturing or graduating with a degree in their home departments that has been supplemented with BTEC courses. Yeah.
How about recruiting from overseas? And I ask that because I'm also a Cambridge graduate, and I just came from the University of Colorado Boulder, and we recruited an awful lot from high school in Cambridge there, and I think you're well aware of the research that goes on there. How much of that do you do?
So is this recruiting students into our programs?
Yeah, PhDs, masters.
Yeah, so actually many of our master's students, there's probably a good mix actually, probably 50-50 now, but are from the US and mostly from North Carolina who are working professionals, so they actually are already working in the industry. But then the other half are coming from overseas. We have a lot of applicants from India. We've actually, we have marketed a bit in India because the head of our academic programs is from India. And so we've done some marketing there, but we're definitely bringing students in overseas. BTEC is known worldwide, so it's a good opportunity for overseas students to come and get a master's degree. You have to be a little careful though, because our mission is to develop the skilled workforce for North Carolina. However, if those students come and they get educated at BTEC and they stay in North Carolina, that's great. Anything else? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your working relationships with UNC, in particular the School of Pharmacy, and other biomedical engineering.
It's a very good question. I personally have had some interaction with the School of Pharmacy. I actually worked with them last year on helping to develop a course. It was a general course in manufacturing, not just biopharmaceutical manufacturing, that they were putting together. I think there could be more interaction there. We have, at BTEC at NC State, we have a lot of our students are actually coming from biomedical engineering. And if you're not familiar with biomedical engineering, that is a joint program between NC State and UNC. So we have students from some biomedical engineering students who are on the UNC side coming and taking courses. Most of them are from NC State who come and take courses. But there are a number of biomedical engineers. I just was working with one a couple of months ago who have decided to go into the biopharma industry. When we use that term biomedical engineering, what biomedical engineers are most often associated with are medical devices, not medicines. But there are biomedical engineers who actually go into the medicines industry. Yeah.
This may be a similar question, but did I hear you say it would be nice to try to expand BTEC to other schools? Okay. So, and you mentioned East Carolina. Mm-hmm. Has there been any discussion between BTEC and Western side of the state and Eastern side of the state to try to start that?
So we're all very connected. We're in contact frequently with folks at East Carolina University, for example. We have very close contact with community colleges. We haven't been west so much, interestingly. I think a lot of the interest is moving the industry east, because there seems to be this natural thing happening where it's kind of happening anyway, right? So for example, Wilson is sitting, I think, on a couple of big announcements for biopharma companies. So our interaction, the way we would envision it, is not just working with universities, although that would be important, probably also working with community college system. We're very tied into the community college system. Within the existing BTEC facility, it's not just NC State BTEC, even though we're most of the facility. We actually have a small portion of the facility that it belongs to the Wake Tech Community College. So we work very, very closely with the community college system. That would probably be the best way to spread our curriculum out. Chip? Yes.
Gary, thank you very much. Gary, a couple of questions. Number one, $6 billion. You're a super salesman. How much of that is your work? How much is it state subsidies for these companies to come in? If you look at all those different ones. Secondly, we have some of these people are quite intelligent. You've sold them on the idea of a job in this field. What would they have to do to come in and be qualified, get your, whatever you do, your diploma, your degree, whatever?
Okay, so let's see. So to get the diploma for BTEC, let's start.
Well, that's the second part. And the first part, how much was state subsidies?
Yeah. So okay, the way I look at companies coming in this is definitely a team effort. I will say that BTEC's existence has made a huge difference because we are providing a workforce for these companies that they know they can take advantage of or employ when they come to the state. So I like to think that BTEC has made a huge difference, but it absolutely is a team effort between the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, all the economic development folks who are involved, who we have very close relationships with, but having that skilled workforce matters, right? So I put us up there pretty high. To your point though, we're actually, if I can afford it, if the center can afford it, we're actually going to have a return on investment study being done by an organization to determine exactly BTEC's part in returning the investment that was originally made in BTEC and the ongoing investment that has been made by the state legislature. Okay, and then the second part of the question was how to get into BTEC. Is that?
And what do we have to do? Do I have to come to class 3 years, 3 times a week for 3 hours, and pass these exams?
So yes, so it depends on what you're after. If you're going after a minor in biomanufacturing, then we offer academic courses just like anybody else. Our courses are designed a little bit differently because they're hands-on. So typically what a course would look like for us is you have 1 day a week of lecture that goes an hour and a half, and then you have 5 hours a week in one course, 5 hours a week in the lab, where we have excellent facilities teaching you fundamental concepts around microbiology, biochemistry, and biomanufacturing. And so yes, it is an academic program just like every other. And you would come to us through one of the departments that already exists at NC State. So half of our students come. Our master's students are our own students, but on the minor side, the undergraduates, half of them are coming from chemical engineering, so they're already enrolled in the university. We're recruiting students into our programs from within the university, but they come from chemical engineering, they come from biochemistry, they come from microbiology, etc. Okay? I see a lot of hands. Go ahead.
What are some supporting industries that will also pop up because of this?
Great question. Give you a perfect example. I was just talking with them yesterday. So there are many regulatory requirements that have to be met in this industry. And so, for example, there's a company in RTP called Sequence. And Sequence is essentially a contractor, a contracting organization that does what we call commissioning, qualification, and validation. So when a new facility comes in and is built, that facility and their processes have to be qualified and validated. And there are all kinds of regulatory requirements around that, but that's a whole industry that has popped up to meet that need. So that would be classified, I think, as a supporting industry, not directly making product, but a supporting industry, and there's a lot of that going on, a lot. I would say if you say right now that I think the number that I've seen most recently from the North Carolina Biotechnology Center is probably around 30,000 people employed directly in biopharma manufacturing. At least double that exists in supporting roles to the biopharmaceutical manufacturing facility.
Maybe growing those Chinese hamsters.
Yes. That's kind of a different thing, but yeah, somebody's got to do that too. Yeah. Yeah, in the back. Oh, sorry.
Would you talk just briefly about what the biomanufacturing process is? We know how you build things, but how you manufacture bioproducts is something that's new to us.
So maybe a good point to start off is we're not stamping out widgets, right? This is it's a biological system. There's a lot of potential for a lot of variability here. And so, in a nutshell, we have what we call a cell line that has been developed before you ever start manufacturing. That cell line is capable of producing these products. You start with a little vial of frozen cells, right? You thaw those cells. You prep those cells in what's called an inoculum. That inoculum goes into a bioreactor. Then those cells grow to be billions and billions of cells in that bioreactor. Each of those cells in that bioreactor is a small factory producing a product, right? And then following that production bioreactor step, then you harvest and you recover and you purify your product. And so what you end up getting is a purified product out of those cells. And there are lots of steps involved in making that purified product. And then you finally get to the final product we call a drug product, and that's usually a liquid solution that gets injected by a patient.
We have one here.
Go ahead. Anybody. I'm happy to stay after.
Here's Mike.
To talk to.
I'm going to ask a question that I'm sure is on everybody's mind here. Yeah. Are you doing any work in age reversal? And
That's a great question. I should have prepped myself now before I came. I know nothing. I know very little about age reversal and the medicines that are used for age reversal. The one comment I would make about age reversal, though, is that several years ago I saw some predictions as to when we would become immortal. And I'm not kidding. And they were like by the end of the 2020s, there would be medicines on the market that could potentially do this. For people who are in the biopharma field, I actually don't read. I don't see much about it, so I don't know enough about the age reversal industry to be able to comment on that.
Thank you all. Thank you, Gary, so much. That was wonderful. If you are so inclined, please take your refuse and recyclables to the correct containers and have a great weekend.